They told you to stay quiet, didn't they? To keep your dreams small, your emotions tucked away. Your fire dim enough not to make anyone uncomfortable. They said it's safer that way. Don't draw attention. Don't take up space. Don't be too loud, too bold, too you. And for a while, you listened. You played along. You hid the parts of yourself that didn't fit their version of normal. You buried your brilliance under politeness. You disguised your passion as patience. You called your silence maturity, when really it was fear wearing a suit. You know what's funny? People think hiding makes them safe. They think if they stay quiet, stay small, stay invisible, they'll somehow avoid pain. But that's the lie, isn't it? You can't hide from pain. You can only trade one kind for another. You hide to avoid rejection, and in return, you get the kind of pain that whispers to you at night. The what if kind. The kind that eats you alive from the inside out. The kind that doesn't scream, just lingers. Because when you bury your truth, you're not protecting yourself. You're suffocating yourself. Every time you swallow your words, every time you shrink your presence, every time you fake a smile to keep the peace, a part of you dies a little. Slowly, quietly, politely. You start convincing yourself it's maturity, that you're being wise, cautious, strategic, but really it's fear. Fear dressed up in responsibility, fear pretending to be control. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right time, for the right moment, for the right opportunity. But there's no such thing. The right time never comes, because fear always finds a reason to delay. It keeps whispering, not yet, not now, not here. And before you know it, years have passed, and you've become a shadow in your own life. You're there, but not really living, just existing, just functioning. The truth is, hiding doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you stuck. You think you're avoiding failure, but you're actually avoiding growth. Because growth only happens in exposure. You can't evolve in secret. You can't discover your power while pretending you don't have any. You can't learn who you are by playing who you're not. The version of you that the world needs can't breathe in the dark. It needs to be seen. It needs to be tested. It needs to be heard. You know what the real tragedy is? The world never gets to meet the real you. They meet your edited version, the one you think they'll accept. You wear masks so well that even you forget who's underneath. And after a while, you start confusing the act with your identity. You call it survival, but it's really self-erasure. You silence yourself to fit into rooms you were meant to redesign. You dim your light to comfort people who are allergic to truth. You pretend to be small, thinking it'll protect you. But all it does is invite the kind of people who thrive on your silence. You see, the moment you start hiding, you give away your power. Because power doesn't live in perfection. It lives in authenticity, in being bold enough to say, "This is who I am. Take it or leave it." That's what terrifies people. Not your flaws, not your failures, your freedom. Because a person who's done hiding is uncontrollable. You can't manipulate someone who's no longer seeking approval. You can't break someone who's already embraced their truth. You can't shame someone who's made peace with their scars. That's real strength. The kind that doesn't need validation to exist. You think you're protecting yourself by hiding, but what you're really doing is robbing yourself of the very thing you're praying for. You ask for purpose, but you keep it private. You ask for success, but you won't show your work. You ask for connection, but you never let people see the real you. You want to be seen, but you're afraid of visibility. You want to be loved, but you won't be known. You can't be both hidden and fulfilled. You have to choose, because purpose and pretense can't coexist. One will always kill the other, and deep down, you know it. You feel it every time you bite your tongue, every time you fake confidence, every time you agree just to avoid standing out. You feel that tension, that internal scream that says, "This isn't me." But you push it down, hoping it'll disappear. It doesn't. It waits. Because truth is patient like that. It'll wait years, decades even. But one day it'll break through. Usually when you're tired, when you can't fake it anymore, when the mask starts to slip, that's when it happens. The breakdown that feels like madness, but is really awakening. You realize that hiding was never about protection. It was about fear of rejection. You were afraid people wouldn't understand you, that they'd laugh, judge, abandon you, and maybe some will, but that's the price of being real. You'll lose some people, but you'll find yourself, and that's worth more than their approval ever was. You'll find peace that doesn't depend on pretending. You'll find freedom in being misunderstood. You'll find strength in standing alone. Because the truth doesn't need to be liked. It just needs to be lived. And the ones who are meant for you will recognize it. They'll see your light and not flinch. They'll hear your truth and not run. But you'll never find them if you keep hiding. You can't attract what you refuse to show. The world can't celebrate a ghost. It can't reward potential it doesn't see. You've spent long enough playing small to make others comfortable. It's time to make yourself visible, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble. Because the longer you hide, the more invisible you become. Not to them, but to yourself. The world doesn't respect what it can't see. You can be the most talented, the most driven, the most gifted person in the room. But if you keep everything buried inside, if you never step forward, the world will walk right past you. It's cruel like that. It rewards exposure, not potential. You can have all the brilliance locked in your head, but brilliance that hides looks a lot like silence. And silence doesn't get noticed. It doesn't get remembered. It gets overlooked, stepped over, forgotten. Because in a world obsessed with noise, you can't afford to whisper your worth. You think people will somehow sense your greatness. That they'll feel it, that they'll see through your modesty and recognize what you carry. But they won't. They're too busy with their own noise, their own chaos, their own mirrors. They don't notice quiet potential. They notice bold presence. You keep waiting for someone to discover you, to pull you into the light. But that's not how it works. You have to step into the light yourself. You have to make the world stop and see you. Because nobody's coming to hand you recognition. You have to claim it. The tragedy is, so many people stay unseen, not because they're unworthy, but because they've mistaken invisibility for humility. They think being humble means hiding, that staying quiet makes them noble. But that's not humility. That's fear dressed up as virtue. Real humility isn't denying your power. It's owning it without arrogance. It's standing tall and saying, yes, I can, without needing applause to validate it. Because pretending you're small doesn't make you good. It makes you invisible. And invisible people don't change the world. You were taught that showing confidence was arrogance, that standing out was dangerous, that being seen would invite judgment. And maybe it will. Maybe people will criticize, whisper, doubt you. But their words can't destroy you. Your silence can. Every time you hide what you're capable of, every time you hold back your voice, you build the cage they wanted you in. They don't have to silence you if you're already doing it for them. They don't have to block your path if you never take the first step. The world doesn't owe you recognition. It owes you reflection, and it reflects what you project. If you hide, it hides you. If you step up, it steps aside. It's funny how people who fear being seen forget how fragile time is. You think you have endless chances, endless tomorrows, endless opportunities to show who you are. But life doesn't wait. The stage doesn't stay empty forever. Someone else steps up. Someone braver, louder, less prepared maybe, but visible. And while you're waiting for the perfect moment, they're already living the one you wanted. That's the painful truth. The world doesn't reward the best. It rewards the bold. And that's what makes it all sting. Knowing that what's holding you back isn't a lack of talent. It's hesitation. You've built a wall made of what ifs and excuses, calling it timing, calling it patience. But really it's fear of failure. You're afraid to be seen trying, afraid to fall in front of people, afraid to be misunderstood. But guess what? You'll be misunderstood either way. You can play small and they'll call you weak. You can rise and they'll call you arrogant. You can't control their narrative, but you can control your own silence. There's a kind of madness in watching others live the life you're built for simply because you were too afraid to be seen. You watch them succeed and think they're lucky. But luck is just visibility meeting opportunity. They showed up. They made noise. They made people look. That's the secret. You have to force the world to notice you, not by screaming for attention, but by existing unapologetically, by walking into rooms like you belong there, by speaking your truth even when your voice trembles. Because silence might keep you safe, but it will never make you seen. And you know what's dangerous about being unseen for too long? You start to believe you don't exist. You start to believe your ideas don't matter, your dreams don't count, your voice doesn't carry. That's how potential dies. Not from lack of ability, but from neglect. You stop feeding it. You stop believing in it. You start blending in with the very people who once told you you couldn't stand out. And soon, you're one of them, living half a life, clapping for others, wondering what it would have been like if you had dared to be seen. It's ironic. The same world that tells you to stay quiet also praises those who refuse to. The same people who mocked your confidence will one day admire your courage. They'll act like they always believed in you, like they always knew you'd make it. They didn't, but you did. Somewhere deep inside, beneath all that doubt, you always knew you were meant for more than silence. You just had to stop asking for permission to be seen. So, no more hiding behind excuses. No more pretending your light is too bright. The world doesn't respect what it can't see, and it never will. You want to be respected. Then step forward. Speak. Move. Show them. Not because you need their validation, but because you owe it to yourself. The world needs what you've been hiding, and the clock isn't waiting for you to be ready. You don't get respect by waiting to be noticed. You get it by standing where everyone can see and daring not to flinch. People spend their whole lives wearing masks, pretending they're fine, pretending they're happy, pretending they've got everything figured out. They smile at the world like nothing's wrong, but deep down, there's a storm. A storm they're too afraid to show because they've been taught that showing pain means weakness, that admitting struggle means failure. So they hide, behind filters, behind fake laughter, behind perfectly timed words that mean nothing. And every day, the mask gets heavier. But they keep it on because the world told them to keep it together. The world doesn't want to see real. It wants to see rehearsed. You walk around thinking that the world will fall apart if you let it see what's actually happening inside you. You convince yourself that nobody would understand, nobody would care. So you build walls. You learn to lie with your eyes, smile with your mouth, and die quietly in your mind. And the sad part, you get good at it. You become so good at pretending that even you start believing your own act. You forget what it's like to feel something real. You forget what it's like to breathe without performance. You turn into your own disguise. People ask how you're doing, and you say, "I'm fine." Those two words, the biggest lie we've all agreed to tell. "I'm fine," has become the world's favorite mask. It's the perfect cover, short enough to hide behind, vague enough to avoid questions. You throw it out like a shield every time someone gets too close, every time someone might actually see the cracks. Because God forbid someone sees the truth. God forbid they realize you're not okay. You'd rather drown in silence than risk being judged for the noise inside your head. But what if you stopped pretending for once? What if you stopped holding it all in and let the world see the raw, unfiltered chaos inside? Not the pretty version. Not the socially acceptable version. The real one. The one that's been screaming behind your smile. What if you stood in public and said, "This is me, broken, confused, messy, and alive"? Maybe then you'd finally breathe. Maybe then you'd finally stop feeling like an actor in someone else's play. Because there's power in being seen. Real power. Not the kind that comes from perfection, but the kind that comes from honesty. People always talk about courage like it's about fighting wars or chasing dreams. But sometimes courage is just taking off the mask in front of people who expect you to keep it on. It's admitting you're not okay in a world that worships okayness. It's showing the scars instead of hiding them. It's telling the truth even when it shakes your voice. Because the moment you do, something happens. Not to them, but to you. You stop being a ghost in your own story. You start existing again. But people won't understand that right away. They'll call you dramatic. They'll say you're seeking attention. They'll whisper like honesty is a crime. That's because your truth reminds them of their own. Your courage makes them uncomfortable because it exposes their pretending. They'll laugh at you, but secretly, they'll envy your freedom. Because deep down, they want to be real too. They just don't know how. They're trapped in the same game. Different masks, same rules. You know what's funny. Everyone's desperate to be understood, but no one's willing to be seen. They want connection. But they hide everything that could make it real. They talk about authenticity like it's a brand, not a way of living. They say, be yourself, then punish you when you actually do it. That's the joke. Everyone wants real until it gets uncomfortable. Everyone wants truth until it stops being pretty. So stop waiting for permission to be honest. Stop editing your pain to make it digestible for people who've never tasted it. Stop apologizing for being human. You're not a robot. You're not supposed to have it all together. Life isn't a performance. It's a confession. And the more you hide it, the heavier it becomes. You carry all that silence like a weight on your chest, suffocating yourself for the sake of appearances. But you can't heal what you keep hidden. You can't find peace pretending you don't need it. It's strange, isn't it? We're all bleeding, all breaking, all trying to keep the illusion alive. Yet everyone's pretending to be fine. What a strange, lonely world we've built. A world that claps for smiles and ignores screams. A world that celebrates the fake and buries the real. And you wonder why people lose themselves. Because you can only pretend for so long before you forget who you were pretending to be in the first place. One day you'll wake up and realize the only thing worse than being judged is never being known. That's what hiding does. It erases you slowly. You fade behind your own act until there's nothing left but echoes of what you used to be. But the moment you stop pretending, the moment you let the world see what's real, that's when you start to live again. Because pain that's hidden grows, but pain that's exposed heals. You've been quiet for too long, playing the part everyone expected you to play. Maybe it's time to stop hiding behind, "I'm fine." Maybe it's time to stop whispering your truth in private and start speaking it in public. Not to prove anything, not to get sympathy, but to set yourself free. Because the world doesn't need another mask. It needs something real, something raw, something honest. It needs you. Without filters, without fear, without pretending. People think silence keeps them safe. That if they don't speak, if they don't show, if they just stay quiet and nod along, life will somehow reward their obedience. They think the world will appreciate their patience, their humility, their ability to swallow every truth and pretend everything's fine. But silence doesn't save you. It cages you. It traps your voice inside your throat until you start to suffocate on the very words you were too afraid to say. You start to rot in your own stillness. You think you're protecting peace, but you're really killing your spirit slowly, one unspoken truth at a time. People confuse silence with strength, but it's not strength, it's survival. And there's a difference. Survival is what you do when you're scared. Strength is what you show when you're not anymore. The world taught you to be silent because it's easier to control quiet people. The moment you start speaking truth, the game changes. The moment you show your real voice, you become dangerous. And they don't like dangerous. They don't like unpredictable. They like obedience, the polite smiles, the nervous laughs, the words that mean nothing but keep everything comfortable. But comfort is a lie, and silence is its servant. You've been silenced so long that even your thoughts whisper now. You doubt your own feelings before they even reach your lips. You ask yourself, should I say this? What will they think? Will they still like me? You edit your truth before it's even born. That's how silence wins, not by force, but by conditioning. It teaches you to betray yourself gently, to censor your soul, until you don't even notice it happening. You become fluent in quiet suffering. You start calling it peace, just to make it sound noble. But peace without truth is poison. It looks calm on the outside, but it kills from within. You think speaking up will make people leave, but silence makes you leave yourself first. You become invisible in your own story. You let everyone else narrate your life, while you just sit there, agreeing, smiling, pretending. You let the world define your worth, because you're too afraid to say otherwise. You forget that your voice is not just sound. It's proof you exist. When you don't use it, you vanish. You dissolve into the background, watching everyone else live while you hold your breath, waiting for permission that will never come. They'll tell you to stay humble, stay respectful, stay quiet, as if silence is a virtue. But most of the time, it's fear in disguise. They want you to shrink so they can shine. They want you to hide your truth so theirs looks cleaner. They'll call you arrogant the moment you stop apologizing for existing. They'll call you dramatic the moment you speak your pain out loud. That's because your voice threatens their comfort. Your truth shakes their illusion. People love silence when it protects their lies. But the moment your honesty walks into the room, they panic. Because realness has a way of exposing what fake can't hide. You were never meant to fit into quiet places. You were built for volume, for chaos, for truth that cracks walls open. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that. You traded your roar for approval. You let the fear of judgment outweigh the weight of your truth. And now you sit there restless, choking on the words you never said. You call it anxiety, you call it pressure. But deep down, it's your voice begging to be heard. It's your soul clawing at the inside of your chest, screaming, "Let me out." And here's the part no one tells you. Once you finally speak, once you break that silence, there's no going back. The moment you taste honesty, everything fake becomes unbearable. You start noticing the noise in other people's silence, the lies in their smiles, the emptiness in their applause. You start craving truth like oxygen, and you can't survive without it anymore. That's what freedom feels like. Terrifying, loud, and absolutely necessary. The world doesn't change when you stay silent. The people who hurt you don't stop because you forgive them quietly. The injustice doesn't vanish because you chose to be the bigger person. All silence does is teach them that you can be silenced, that you'll accept it, that you'll take the hit and say thank you. But the moment you stop, the moment you look up and say, "No more," everything trembles. Because suddenly, the script doesn't work anymore. You stop being predictable. You stop being controlled. You stop being a character and start being the writer. People will say you've changed. Of course you have. You stop pretending. They'll say you're louder now. Of course you are. You stop choking on your truth. They'll say you're difficult, rebellious, rude. That's what they call people who stop being easy to manipulate. But that's fine. You weren't born to be agreeable. You were born to be real. And realness has never been polite. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to stop whispering what should have been screamed long ago. Because your truth doesn't need validation. It just needs release. The world might not clap for it. They might not understand it. They might even turn away. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that your silence finally breaks, that the sound of your truth echoes louder than your fear ever did. They told you that fitting in was survival. Blend in, stay small, don't draw attention. They said standing out was dangerous, that the world eats the loud, the bold, the different. So you adjusted. You softened your edges. You dimmed your fire just enough not to make anyone else uncomfortable. You started calling it maturity, calling it wisdom, when really it was surrender. Because deep down, you knew you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to be seen. But they made you believe that visibility was arrogance, that confidence was sin, that wanting to shine made you selfish. And so you began to shrink, not because you didn't have power, but because the world made you apologize for it. You can always tell when someone was meant to stand out. There's a restlessness in their silence, a storm behind their eyes. They walk differently, like they're holding something the world can't quite understand. And the world feels it too. That's why it tries so hard to tame them. It calls them too much, too loud, too intense. But the truth is, the world isn't threatened by your noise. It's terrified of your presence. Because presence demands attention, and attention brings change. The system can't handle change. It runs on conformity. The moment you stop blending in, you break the machine. That's why they call you dangerous. You weren't built for quiet corners. You were made for the center of the storm. The spotlight isn't arrogance when you've earned your scars. You've bled for that light. You've cried for it. You've clawed your way through darkness just to be worthy of standing in it. And now they want you to go back, to hide again, to apologize for surviving too loudly. Isn't it funny? They didn't care when you were broken, but the moment you heal, the moment you rise, suddenly you're intimidating.